Giovanni, if you had a crystal ball 9, 10 years ago, and you saw what was coming, would you have still taken on the job as Director General?
I like challenges and I like change. Logically, I was not expecting this, because when Leo Malley offered me the job, you say, Giovanni, after what happened, it will be a nice and easy ride. And everything happened. On the other side, those events of September 11 give me the opportunity to make change. I was saying to Leo, I'm not the right guy to run IATA. Why? After Alitalia, remember that my boss was Jack Welch. I will do exactly what I used to do in the company, partially owned by GE. Same kind of target, same kind of approach. So this is not what I have to do. And probably September 11 happened. We had all the US airlines except American Airlines in Chapter 11. We were handing over $1 billion of security deposits. We had to change and had to express this. Logically, when I went to ask to my boss, Jack Welch, do you suggest me to take this job? He said, Giovanni, you have a great opportunity because situation helped. And I asked him just one, I would need your help. I would need to have, as a first start in IATA, to have the support of Noel Tichy, the professor, the famous professor that runs the Crotonville Business School of GE. He told Giovanni, if you have Tichy in IATA, it's like putting a bomb in a church. And that is what I need.
You know, we see you talk about, you're a high achiever, you like a challenge. And I have seen you, as most of us here, or many of us, all of us here have seen you, AGM after AGM, of course, making some very historical declarations. But I have to say, one of the ones that probably most stood out for me, I think this is my 6th or 7th AGM, was Vancouver, 2007, when you aim for the carbon neutral growth on the way to, of course, a carbon-free future. And you know, we remember many of the faces. Some of these people here, their faces. I think Wolfgang had a particular face on him when you announced that. I mean, where in the world, where did you get the courage to make that announcement?
You know, I'm not an expert of environment, but I was living in London with Oporto. And I understood that the environment was going to become a real problem. My job in IATA is to try to build consensus, but also lead. I went to the US with our US friend. They were saying, Giovanni, we've not signed Kyoto. I was going to see Minister Patel of Minister Yang in China. We have to grow. To our friends in Africa, we are 002. So I had two options. All the nice and comfortable options say, okay, I wait for consensus, or I take the lead. I thought that for the industry in that moment was more important taking the lead. And I built in my state of the industry the position of the industry. Logically, I was facing Wolfgang because I had Wolfgang in front of me. And being an engineer that knows of practical things, I was looking on aspiration and on goals. And he nearly fainted. But after, when I tried to prepare the story and say this was an aspiration, but we had to build a united team. And the incredible surprise of this is immediately after, I went to see all my friends in Boeing, Airbus, the manufacturers, the airports, the air navigation service, and we were able, as an industry, to have the first only position on environment that helped us in defend against the many attacks that we would have without this kind of strategy.
Let's talk about conflict, because you've had a lot of that in the 9 years, of course. And we've seen you go head-to-head with many airports around the world, from Narita to Toronto. In fact, I was told at one point you were, in fact, all of IATA, you were banned, right, from Toronto.
Yeah, we were banned from Toronto. And here I have Robert Milton in front of me, who was not banned, but he didn't have an easy life. But he had the courage to support us. And it was funny because Narita was the first case, and it quite fast. After a couple of years, we were battling with Toronto, and many of the board members will remember. And I had a journalist that came and told me, Giovanni, you have been successful in Narita, but Toronto is taking more time. My target is to get rid of the minister, and the second of get rid of the CEO. It took me a bit of time, but with a certain kind of political kind of support because elections. And now, with Toronto and with Narita, we have a great partnership. Narita is Toronto has won an Eagle Award. Norita is here with my best friend, and we cooperate in a very, very effective way. So we've changed the way, and with many of those ones that we were fighting, they are now on our side.
It comes down to negotiating tactics, negotiating skill, of course, from you. And you know, Giovanni, at one point, I have to say I was a little disappointed because I thought that your negotiating tactics and skill was because of your, we heard it from Alan from Qantas, Sama from Golf. They were singing your praises, and I used to think the same thing. I thought your negotiating tactics and skill was your charm and your personality and your experience of the industry. But I have since found out otherwise, Giovanni, and I have been very disappointed. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I give you Exhibit A, Giovanni's negotiating tactic. You didn't know this was coming, Giovanni.
No, I don't know what I mean.
I bet you wished you had one of those about an hour ago. It's Giovanni Eastwood, you know? Was that, go ahead, make my day, Toronto. Yeah, so there's Exhibit A. Let's take a look at Exhibit B, ladies and gentlemen. Another gun, Giovanni. And I have to tell you, because this has been blown up very large, I've actually seen the real picture. But you can't see it, unfortunately, because of the shade under the hat. But Giovanni's got his eyes closed. And I think 101, textbook 101, shooting a gun, keep your eyes open.
You know, but my only guns are expressing, embarrassing governments of partners with number, figures, and facts. You cannot just shout. Embarrass with figures and facts. And that makes a story.
Absolutely. I'm only joking because we just love those pictures. But there's more. There's more. There's one more. Well, a couple of more, actually. Let's bring up the next one. See, gone of the guns, and I thought Giovanni's on a tennis court with tennis whites on, thinking he was serving a ball. Look closely. He's throwing bloody knives. Giovanni, you've gone guns, knives, one more. We've got this one, and you've got the EU in your sights. Giovanni, what is it with guns and knives?
But these are those used just once a year in a weekend with friends. So I never carry it in the office or when I go in meetings.
No, we do know that, indeed, indeed. Look, we've talked about it, we've seen it, we've talked about it over the AGMs, and it's been highlighted again by your friends here and those in the industry. IATA, security, checkpoint of the future, simplifying the business, the efficiency of it all. If I ask you today, as you move on, what's your greatest concern for the industry?
You know, my greatest concern is it's a very fragile industry. You know, I tell you, last year we had a good profit, the best profit in the history. $18 billion, 3% margin. It was a great result because, you know, after 2009, we were really in a desperate situation. I still remember in those times, at the end of 2009, they would say, how long will it take to recover? And I would say, I have a great chief economist, but I would need a chief magician. But let's go back, 2001. We had a drop of $22 billion, and it took us 3 years to recover. In 2009, we had $80 billion of revenues, and it took us 1 year. So it was a great result, but at the end, we had to terminate 25 airlines. This industry has $210 billion of debt. Our margin in 65 years is 0.2. And that is why we are very fragile. And that's the reason why when last year in Berlin, we could have celebrated a 3% margin, I prefer to celebrate in a different way, opening the discussion to what could be the future. In putting together this incredible team of Vision 2050, and all our colleagues and members have the report in their pack, in order to look ahead.
A lot achieved, but can I ask you, any regrets? And if so, what?
But you know, there are many unfinished issues. Probably the most relevant, because it was a hard work that we were not able to terminate, was security. You know, security, it was difficult. You know, at the beginning, I thought that we could manage with regulators like safety. In safety, we share everything. The relation with airlines, manufacturers, regulator is an open book. And so I started my first meeting with Governor Ridge or Secretary Chefto. the new first Secretary of Homeland Security, was the same approach. We are in the same boat. Let's work together. But they were flagging, this is different. Security is a national responsibility. We cannot share, we cannot work together. The result is that we are paying now $7 billion for a security system that is much safer, but it's a hassle. And so we were lucky that we had the opportunity with the new administration, Obama, to have Secretary Napolitano, who understands this. And 3 years ago, I designed this markup that you see outside, checkpoint of the future. What I would like as a passenger. At the beginning, everybody told me, Giovanni, it's a crazy idea, it will never work. Now you have a markup. It has received approval from Secretary Napolitano in TSA in April, and it's under discussion in ICAO. That is an unfinished. You know why? Because we have 2.8 billion passengers. We have to try desperately as an industry to have 2.5 billion people on board supporting aviation. Many of the regulations that we see around the world in Europe, the night boarding compensation, all those kind of things, because many of those passengers are unhappy. And most of this unhappiness starts when you have to board a plane. Logically, you have some big airports in Asia and Middle East that are much more modern. But in most parts of the world, Europe and United States, it's a hassle. If we take the hassle, we make the passengers happy, and we will have to have a couple of billion of people supporting aviation. Because we make the village a global reality, and we really connect the world. The problem is that governments realize the importance of aviation when we have a volcano. A week after, it's over.
Well, since you're raising some issues, and tell me, if you don't want it, if I was to put my journalist hat on, given what we heard, talking about issues, given what we heard, in this morning's session, people raising some issues about transparency in their minds, would you like to use this platform just briefly to say anything about
logically, what are the most important issues or the most greatest challenges that they have in the board? The board is when we have to decide important issues, and we have to use targets. In an association, you are not accustomed. Targets that doesn't exist. When I joined IATA, I was saying, we have to make money, not because we have to pay a dividend, because we are non-profit. We have to make money because we have to help our members to get on board. The small airline that will never make it with simplifying or with IOSA. But at the same time, we have to set targets. My boss was always saying, Jack Welch, no target, no business. And when I was going at the board and saying IOSA, and saying, we always say that safety is a #1 priority. We have a great, great audit system, recognized by the entire world. Let's make it mandatory. And everybody was saying, it's good, it's right. But after everybody was saying, I have to give a target. And that was difficult. A target on IOSA. I see Robert Milton there, who helped me in putting the target for the IOSA. So putting targets, it's difficult. We have to be balanced, but our satisfaction is not just to put a target, it's to help our members on getting on board. Logically, big concern that I have is when I have to stop an airline from our systems, our financial systems. When I stopped it from the financial system, in 24 hours, they're out of business. I still remember how tough it is to take a decision. I remember one of the most important, every case is a tragedy for a company. I remember Varig. It was in the Berlin Soccer Cup. I was looking how the results were going because I know that the situation of Varig was like this. And at a certain point, I saw we cannot stop. We have to do it as I called the minister, I called the president of Varig. I say, we are closing the light. And in 12 hours, a great company of a great history in Latin America stopped. We solved the problem that was related. The Star Alliance members were very grateful because they helped the stranded passengers. But those cases are really always difficult, but I have to handle our members' money.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's move on because time is ticking here. We all have people we admire. Outside, if I was to ask you, outside of aviation, who's somebody that you admire?
My great boss, my great mentor, Jack Welch.
To you, the best businessman?
The best business I've ever known.
Okay. Some questions about IATA. Quick round questions. Quick round. I'm going to fire these off. Most difficult day in the organization?
Most difficult day for me, we had this very difficult financial situation, Lehman Brothers and so on. And we were quite comfortable because say, look, we have a good system. We know exactly what's going on in the airlines. We have a watchdog. We're comfortable. After I received a call at 3 o'clock in the morning, my first job was in Citibank, 1970. And I always say my experience in Citibank, it's a leitmotif on when I speak with my management team. And I received a call at 3 o'clock in the morning from a friend of mine in the States, important friend. He would say, Giovanni, there are strong rumors that Citibank will go out of business. What? Are you joking? He said, Giovanni, I called my CFO and I asked, how much money do we have in Citibank? Several millions. And so that was difficult as I take decision. We kept them there. We made the right decision. But that was a very difficult couple of hours.
Happiest day?
Happiest day, I have many happiest days. Where every time that I go to an airline, a small airline, in Zimbabwe, Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia, and I see that with our support, they're able to meet those targets, and I see motivated small teams that are waiting this IATA team as Papa Noel, that's a great satisfaction.
Most difficult board meeting? Does one stand out?
I would say probably that of electronic ticketing.
Okay.
Because we had set a date, we were there, we had many, many airlines that were trying to have an extension, but at the end we had the right decision. We extended for 6 months. Also, if the targets are important, but because the problem was that Russia did not pass a law making electronic ticket legal. And so it was not because of airlines or because IATA, it was just an external impediment.
Okay, and briefly, I'm going to tie these two together. Either the funniest experience or your most interesting trip/mission.
Well, missions many, but logically, when you receive a call from the Minister of North Korea inviting you to go to Pyongyang to solve some of the problems, my first idea is, as I normally do, I fly with the member airlines. I arrive in Beijing airport, ready to fly on Pyongyang, and I see that we have 5 passengers, 3 were IATA. Another one was there, and he said he had a little traveling bag with a little pipe. I said, well, what is it? It's an oxygen bottle because we don't have oxygen in the plane, and we have problem with pressurization. I step on the plane, we fly on an old Ilyushin with 4 engines. The trip was tough. I land in Pyongyang. There's a couple of planes similar to my stranded on the 2 sides of the runway. I received greetings from the minister and government and said, Mr. Bisignani, we are very lucky that you arrived because, you know, having an accident with the Director General IATA would be very bad to the reputation of the Korea.
Okay, let's move on because we'll get very close to wrapping this up. I find it very difficult to imagine you with your energy and your enthusiasm to come down. So it's hard to imagine you retiring. I also can't picture you on the beach. I can't picture you, but talking of pictures, we did find some pictures of Giovanni just relaxing, I guess. Let's take a look at this first one. Well, not so much relaxing. I bet you could have used that on that flight, actually.
New Zealand, this is.
That's New Zealand. Right, nice picture. The next one, Giovanni on a horse. I'm sure there's a gun somewhere there as well in that picture. And the next one, that's both of you up in the Antarctica.
Yes.
In the Antarctica, yes, I should say. And the next one, fishing. It's hard to tell on this picture, but when I looked at this picture, there's not a drop of water in sight. God only knows what you were doing.
It's a pond in front.
There's a pond. Oh, I don't know about you. You were practicing, I'm sure.
I was practicing fly casting.
One more. And then your much better half. Much better half there, indeed. What are you going to do?
No, I changed life. You know, I had, when I took the job of IATA, and the last person that convinced me to take in the job was Jürgen Weber, who called me, but spoke also with Elena, saying it's important, IATA at this moment, etc. But I promised to my wife that At 65 years and at 10 years of IATA, if I was staying so much, I was returning to London. So I keep the promises. So I'm perfectly prepared on this. Well, different life. I've joined a couple of boards, nuts, saffron. I'll be teaching in a couple of parts of the world, including Singapore, and changing in a different style. Being involved in aviation was a different role, but enjoying a bit more life, because really in those times I enjoyed working, but not a lot of life.
Actually, we're talking about enjoying life. Our last quick round fire of questions. You don't have to have explanations for here. You used to tell me what? Well, during your tenure as DG, what, 90 hours a month you were flying. Yeah. So let's start with, how did you tackle jet lag?
But I'm quite accustomed. First of all, I don't eat on a plane. I think some crackers or something like this. I use melatonin, and I never look at film. I just read my papers and I sleep. And when I arrive, and sometimes I arrive at midnight and I have an entire day for me, I have a glass of Coke.
Wow, you wild thing, glass of Coke. Your favorite part of the world?
Let's say Italy. Also, I've not spent a lot of time in the last 12 years.
Can I ask you your favorite airline?
They're all favorite, my airlines.
Yeah, I didn't think that was going to. And a trip, a trip that you haven't taken, that you'd like to, part of the world. Is there a part of the world?
I think so. Yeah, there's still some parts of the world, but probably some small island in the Pacific I've not visited.
Okay, I can recommend Atataki. Giovanni Bisignani, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Best of luck.
Thank you.
Best of luck.
Thank you.